What is up, guys? It's Bolagnaise here. Different video today. Today I'm going to do a settings video. After watching Elfish Guy or Jordan, who's a WGL APAC caster, I got talking to him in Twitch and was giving him some hints and tips, and I suggested or asked him if he would like a settings video. So this is where this has come from. So this is basically directed towards newer players or players, even players that have 5, 10, 15,000 games and are still struggling with the game. Now, a big part of the game is setting up your settings correctly, because there's a lot of options in the game that allow you to have an advantage over other players. So I'm going to go through and show you what my settings are. Now you can go through and have a play with them yourself. And I'll chuck this in the forum and come back to me and tell me what you think. So basically, we're going to go to settings here in Garage, and my first thing I'm going to point out is I only play standard battle. I have a statistically worse time winning games in encounter and assault simply because the players that play these modes are statistically worse. So I play one mode that's standard only. Sometimes I will play assault, but generally only standard battles. In the battle interface area here, there's a lot of important settings that you can look at and adjust, and that will actually affect on how well you're able to basically target enemies. The first one that should be disabled is the enabled optics effect. Basically what this does is it creates like a haze, like a green like filter around the reticle, or a bluish filter around the reticle when you're in sniper mode, and it looks actually shit, and it's really hard to discern enemies outside your peripheral vision of where you're aiming sometimes with that turned on. So that should definitely be turned off. Dynamic camera should be turned off in my opinion. I have played with it turned on in the past, but I would definitely recommend that you leave that turned off. Basically what that does is that it makes your gun jump or bounce after every shot. Okay, it doesn't actually affect the aim time of the gun. However, it is visually distracting, so I recommend having that turned off. Horizontal stabilization in sniper mode. By default, this should be enabled for everyone that's new to the game. But if you're not playing with this turned on, I highly recommend you do turn it on. Basically, you can have a play around with this with yourself in a training room or something, but with it turned off, and if you aim at a tank and you're driving forward and you turn your tracks left or right, your gun will follow your track, or basically the direction of your vehicle, and won't stay looking at the tank. With it turned on, where you aim, the gun will follow, even if your tracks are turning. 16 and 25 times zoom, I highly recommend, unless you're playing on like a 14-inch monitor like I do. I have a gaming laptop that I take away for work, and I have to have this enabled just because it's 14 inches and it's really hard to see. I play on a 27-inch standard. I highly recommend you have this disabled, because not only is it harder to have situational or good situational awareness with this when you're so zoomed in, it's actually, in my opinion, harder to hit shots in 16 and 25 times zoom. So definitely disable that, and if you're using that currently, I highly recommend turning that off. This other stuff is up to you. Restrict toggling to sniper mode to the shift key, depends on how you play. I use a scroll wheel, and I just use the scroll wheel to zoom in, and the shift key to toggle between sniper mode and arcade. Server Reticle I personally don't use and think it's utter trash. Unless you're playing on like 20 ping, then it's not worth it. There are third party reticle mods you can get, like Server Cross 2, that basically do the same thing but better, because there is no real perceived delay. If you're anything over 50 ping, this really is distracting for me, in my opinion. In terms of graphics play a big part in World of Tanks, in my opinion, and by adjusting them, they allow you to give you the best opportunity to kill an enemy tank. So I played 1440p. Now I have played at 1080p before. Whether you play at 1080p or 1440 doesn't really matter. Anything above 1080 is, is just really doesn't matter. But obviously, the larger screen you have, the more information you can take in my opinion. I use triple buffering because I use a thing on my new GTX 1070 called FastSync, and it just works better with triple buffering. I do not use anti-aliasing. I used to use anti-aliasing, but no more. In my opinion, it gave me some delay within the game when I was firing, and so I do not use it at all anymore. And at 1440p, anti-aliasing isn't really needed. I played 120 degrees field of view, so that when I'm in arcade mode, I have the most amount of information being given to me at any one time. And I highly recommend, if you are playing on from a 14-inch monitor all the way up to a 32-inch monitor, that you have field of view on 120 degrees. This is going to allow you to have better situational awareness on the game, okay, compared to what I think the standard is 90 degrees or something like that. Okay, my refresh rate and all that, that's going to be specific to your monitor, so it's not something we can really adjust. If your graphics card can handle it, I highly suggest playing on improved graphics. Now, even if your graphics, like my gaming laptop, which is an Alienware, but it's like 3-4 years old now, it has like a GTX 765M in it or something like that. It really can't play the game on improved graphics right now, but I still have it on improved graphics, and I have basically everything on low, except for this one feature here, which is called terrain quality. Terrain quality is on maximum. This is highly important that you always have terrain quality on maximum. And the reason for this, and it says it in the description, reducing the value of this parameter can cause desynchronization of the landscape display between the client and the server. So basically, imagine if you're on a hill, okay, and you're poking, you've got gun impression, and you're shooting at another tank. If you have terrain quality on low, potentially what could happen is you are aiming at a tank, but your gun, and it looks like you're clear of the ground, but your gun is actually sticking into the hill. If you have it on low or anything above maximum, actually. So if you can do it, I highly suggest putting terrain quality on maximum. All this other stuff is basically, texture quality, lighting quality. It's what makes the game look good. I highly recommend turning post-processing off, flora density off, because it's just going to muddle up your screen and make bushes thicker. You don't want thick bushes. You don't need to have extra effects on. Lighting can be off. Texture quality can be off, basically. It just makes, ricochets and stuff look better, but you don't need it on. Water quality can be off. Decals can be off. Object LOD is, you want to, this is another option you want to try and have on maximum, because what it does is it adjusts the amount of rendered objects that are in. So potentially, at 450 meters or something, there could be a dead hole or a wreck of a tank, and if this is on low, that may not be rendered. Okay, so if you can afford to have this on without a significant FPS hit, make sure it's on maximum as well. Foliage quality should always be on low, in my opinion. Draw distance should also be on maximum. Motion blur off. Now this is a big one, some people have this on. Foliage transparency should be turned off, and also should be grass in sniper mode. Foliage transparency basically means that when it is disabled, as it is currently, nearby trees and bushes are completely invisible, which improves game performance, but also allows you to shoot tanks easier through bushes. Okay, because it is easier for you to see the outline of the tank as long as you're within 0 to 14.99 meters. Obviously, when you're at 15 meters, then the bush will go opaque. But anywhere from 0 to 14.99 meters, the bush will appear completely transparent, which makes it much easier to hit targets that are especially moving through bushes, as you're able to adjust your lead much easier. You don't want to have dynamic change of effects quality turned on, and I personally don't run track traces. You can, and track effects, you can have them turned on if you want to. Going on to sound now. My master volume is normally on 10. I run Windows at 100%, master volume at 10%. Okay, and so people who watch my Twitch will know what sort of sounds I get from the game. I have ambience off, music and battle and music and garage completely turned off. effects at 100, voice notifications at 100, and interface at 100. But a big thing for me recently that I've changed is I do not have any vehicle sounds turned on. And the reason for this is that after watching several high-profile streamers and experimenting with myself, I found that the vehicle sounds are actually quite distracting. And just the gun sounds themselves are enough for... You don't need vehicle sounds. I mean, if you get a broken engine, you know you've got a broken engine because you can't drive as fast. And also the game will tell you in the user interface. I use, obviously, headphones. I have some Audio Technica headphones. And standard and National Crew voices. Now, in my opinion, you should be using standard crew voices. Unless you speak Swedish, French, Russian, I would highly recommend using standard crew voices. The reason for this is that those audible cues are going to allow you to react quicker to critical hits that you receive, i.e. to your ammo rack, to your tracks, and also critical hits that you give to other tanks as well. So, for example, if you hear that one didn't go through, okay, for example, you're shooting at an E100 and you're in a T62A and you're shooting a APCR at it. If you have crew voices on and it says, something in Russian, I'm not going to learn Russian just to understand what it says in game, so that then I can adjust to that. Okay, so it's going to make me able to respond. Obviously, I can see the screen and I can see if it penetrated or not. But an audible cue and a visual cue for me makes it easier to react to in-game. I'm just going to chuck this back on 10. Okay, controls. This is a big one. My mouse control, okay, is 1200 DPI. I used to play on 1600, but now I play on 1200 DPI in game. And my sniper aim is lower than my arcade aim, and it is almost pretty low. Now, if we go and look at streamers like this, Decker from Fame, okay, and Xena, who doesn't really stream anymore, but these two, especially Decker streams like at least twice a week. Okay, if you go and watch Decker and even go look at some of his old VODs, okay, and January 7th is his last stream, so 2 days ago. He is one of the most amazing people with mouse control. Him and Xena. Xena's is also, and they both play at 400 DPI, and their in-game settings are almost on 0. Okay, so they're down here somewhere, and mouse control plays a huge part in World of Tanks. Being able to accurately aim and shoot a weak point on your tank is going to allow you to pen more shots and therefore do more damage. Therefore, you're going to increase your win rate, you're going to increase your WN8, you're going to increase your average damage per game by having good mouse control. And so I highly recommend, if you're playing on a high DPI setting right now, say 1600, 2000 DPI, that you start lowering it gradually, not straight away. You don't need to go to 1200, you don't need to go to 800, you don't need to go to 400 straight away, but every day lower at 100 DPI. You will get used to it, and the lower your DPI settings, the more accurate you're going to be able to change. Now, I had a conversation with Xena in a Twitch chat a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that for him to spin his tank 360 degrees, he literally has to move his hand from one side of the mouse pad to the other on his desk. And he has a large mouse pad. It's one of those large soft ones. So he literally has to slide it around 30 centimeters to do a full 360. And so this plays a huge part, in my opinion, into aiming. Now, I've had several conversations with other people as well, and they have low DPI, and I highly recommend that you go and watch Decker, and his Twitch name, I'll link him below in the video, is DeChapel, Decker PL, DeChapel, whatever you want to say, and Xena, or X3N4 on Twitch, and they both have lots of videos that you can watch. You can find a lot of replays on YouTube as well. So, aiming. Make sure that you set this up correctly so that you have the best ability to do damage in game. Now, Reticle. A lot of people say Reticle is a user's choice, and in my opinion, that is incorrect. There is literally only two options you should be using in game. Okay, whether you have dash, diagonal, horizontal, radial, that's up to you. Personally, up to you. However, I always recommend placing this slider as far left on all of them. And for me, it has less clutter than all the others. I personally use dashed with it 0. So I have nothing around here. I have everything else at 100 on arcade. My central marker is O-shaped, and I have played in the past with aim.1. But now I play with O-shaped 1. The reason for this is that these are the only two markers, central markers, I would recommend playing with. Because if you have a marker, for example, such as, that's not really a good one because you can't really see it that well. For example, T-shaped. This marker, for example, this T-shaped marker, has a larger surface area, obviously, than O-shaped one. Now what happens is, see this terrain here, is if you place this T-shaped terrain marker over this terrain here, and then a tank appears here, what will happen, and you may have seen this if you are not using one of these two reticles, is that your reticle will bounce between terrain. And this is a feature of World of Tanks. Okay, you can go read up about it. But basically, the reticle is designed to follow terrain contours. Okay, it's an actual feature of World of Tanks. And so if your reticle is quite large, then what will happen is it will bounce between the two objects that it's trying to aim at, i.e. the tank and the terrain. So I highly recommend that you either used O-shaped one or aim.1 for your central marker. And for your aim point marker, I highly recommend you only use aim.1 with armor penetration indicator. And what this means is that this central marker here, if you cannot penetrate, it will be red. If you have a chance of penetrating, i.e. you need to high roll, it will be orange. And then if you can penetrate, okay, it will be green. Remembering that this color only changes, okay, based on the armor thickness, not on angling. So say you're shooting at an E100 lower plate and it's 200 millimeters effective. I don't actually know what it is because I don't look at those stats. But for example, you had 240 millimeters of penetration. It will obviously be green if you're looking at it and he's flat onto you. But if he's angled, it will still be green. However, his effective armor thickness could be 280 millimeters. However, it will still show green. Okay, so you got to remember that that's how that armor penetration indicator works. It doesn't take into account angling. In sniper mode, I also use dashed. I also used O-shaped eye, and I also use aim.1. Identical settings for both arcade and sniper. And for me, that is the best way because you're not going to get confused and your brain doesn't have to think extra when you're going between arcade and sniper mode. I have zoom indicator turned off. I don't really like this turned on. It's quite distracting for me. It's just another thing that I have to look at on screen. And I understand what my zoom is, so I don't need to look at it. Moving on to marker. So for the enemy team, I highly recommend that you turn off player names for enemies. What do you need to know the player names for? Unless you're playing in WGL, okay, this is not my WGL account. This is my standard account. You don't need to know the player name. All right, if you see a person that you don't like, all that's going to do is cause you to focus him, okay, and not do damage to tanks that you need to in order to win the game. So I only run vehicle model and health indicator, okay, and that health indicator should always be HP left of total. Okay, it should never be percentage. Never use this, or you can use HP left. Okay, but never hide it. The reason for this is that you know that, for example, if a tank is on full health, I don't know the statistics or the HP of every tank in the game off the top of my head. If I'm in a bat chat, I know I've got 1950 clip. With 5 rounds, I can do 1,950 potential damage. Okay, as long as I don't low roll. So if I see a tank, with 1,800 damage, HP left, then I know that I have a good chance of going in and clipping him out. But if I have it on percentage, then I don't know what that is. 73% of what? You don't understand. You don't know what that is. Okay, I have damage received turned on. Just shows you what damage the tank has taken. And so you can see what has shot at him and also what you rolled. Okay, obviously it's for the dank memes when you roll 420 and you can get all excited. And for our team, obviously I have play names turned on my account. For my WGL account, I do have play names turned on for WGL, obviously because it is easier to call out focus fire when you say a player's name as compared to a tank, because if the enemy team brings 6 back chats, then if someone says shoot the back chat, that doesn't make any sense. So you need to call out an individual in WGL and Clan Wars. It can also be used in Clan Wars, so if you play a lot of Clan Wars, definitely turn on player names. Okay, and for our team, I highly recommend using player names as well, just so that if you need to talk to someone or ask them to do something, or if you're in a platoon with someone, you can always just reference that person's name instead of the tank, because again, you could have multiple of the same tank. Anyway, this is a quick, well, not really quick, was it, guide on my settings, and I highly recommend you go and look at the links I'm going to place down below, the 2 Twitch channels, Deca and Xena from Fame, because they have some of the best aiming I've ever seen in my life. They're super smooth. They're both 5k plus W8 recents, and they're just amazing players. So you should definitely check them out. If you like this style of video, please give me a thumbs up so I know that I'm doing something right and that it's something that you guys want to see. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.